The courtroom was stuffy, as if the walls themselves heard every word and silently judged. Officer Reynolds, tall, smug, and rigid, shoved Elias Thompson forward like a trophy. His movements were abrupt, deliberately rough. The chains on Elias's wrists rattled so loudly it felt like a display of force. Elias didn't resist. His face remained calm, his eyes steady, but a powerful presence could be felt in the silence. The people in the room watched with interest and prejudice. To them, he was just an accused man, another dangerous black male. Reynolds leaned in and hissed, "You're nobody here. Today, you'll learn your place." The judge entered. The trial began. The prosecutor, wasting no time, described Elias as an aggressive participant in a bar brawl in Midtown, allegedly threatening the lives of those around him. The words were chosen to evoke fear. Reynolds nodded at every accusation, a small smile at the corner of his lips. Elias, however, only responded when asked. His voice was deep, but he spoke little. Name, address in the Bronx, brief answers. In his silence, there was something more than simple defense. It was the discipline of a man accustomed to waiting and acting at the right moment. "I in the crowd." Someone whispered, "He looks familiar." Another replied, "No, just another criminal." A young boy in the back rose, tugged his father's sleeve. "Dad, that's the Navy SEAL they showed on TV. He saved the hostages." The man quickly put a finger to his lips, afraid of being heard. But the child's words hung in the air, like a spark ready to ignite. The judge pretended not to notice Reynolds' excessive harshness when he yanked the chains. But a few jurors had already exchanged glances. They saw the officer behaving too aggressively. Elias sat up straight, as if not in a cage, but on a military base, awaiting orders. He knew the truth would always find a way out. He just needed to endure. His silence began to unnerve Reynolds far more than any words. The courtroom on the second day of the trial was more crowded than before. Journalists had sniffed out that the case wasn't as simple as it seemed. Reynolds, however, walked confidently, as if it were his personal stage. He smiled, adjusted his uniform, and each time he passed Elias, he tugged the chains, as if to show everyone his authority. The prosecutor passionately described the events at the Red Lion pub. He claimed Elias attacked first, threatened with a knife, and patrons fled. His speech sounded convincing to those who didn't know the whole truth. But then Elias's lawyer, a middle-aged woman, strict and confident, stood up. She began to methodically dismantle the prosecution's testimony. The first eyewitness, the bartender, took the stand. At first, he hesitated, but under the barrage of questions, he admitted Elias was surrounded by 3 men who shouted insults and tried to hit him first. He was defending himself, the bartender said. Officer Reynolds rushed in and grabbed him without even asking what happened. A silence fell over the room. Reynolds gritted his teeth. His smile became strained. He tried to interrupt. "This man is lying. They're all in on it." But the judge reprimanded him, reminding him that the floor was given to the parties in order. Subsequent witnesses only increased the pressure. 2 patrons of the pub confirmed the bartender's words. The picture began to change. Elias no longer looked like the aggressor, but rather the victim. The jurors started glancing at each other. Someone in the room whispered, "Looks like something shady is going on." And then Elias's lawyer made a move no one expected. She placed a thick folder on the table. "Your Honor," she said, "before we continue, I am obliged to provide information about my client's identity. This is not just an accused man. This is a hero." She opened the folder, and the room filled with photographs. Elias in uniform, Elias with his Navy SEAL team, Elias receiving medals for rescue operations. The jurors stretched their necks. Journalists began frantically snapping photos. The judge frowned and turned to the prosecutor. "Did you know who was before us?" He stammered, unable to find words. Reynolds went pale. For the first time, his confidence wavered. Elias raised his eyes and calmly said, "I didn't ask for recognition. I just wanted justice." His voice was quiet, but every word pierced the air like a command on a combat mission. By the morning of the 3rd day, the court had turned into an arena for public attention. Veterans gathered outside the building, some in uniform, some with medals on their chests. They stood silently, like a living wall of support for Elias. Journalists filmed them, commentators discussed the case live. Inside the room, the tension was palpable. Every step, every word could decide the fate not only of the accused, but also of Officer Reynolds himself. Reynolds tried to seize the initiative. He was called as a witness and spoke loudly, trying to look like a hero. He described Elias as a dangerous and aggressive man who could kill anyone. He waved his arms, describing how bravely he chained him, saving those around him. But the more he spoke, the more his speech resembled self-promotion. Elias's lawyer waited for a pause and asked a simple question. "Tell me, Officer Reynolds, were you aware of my client's military background when you put the chains on him?" Silence. Reynolds opened his mouth, but the words were stuck. His smug smile vanished, and you could see that moment. Two men in uniform, Elias's comrades, entered the room. The judge allowed them to testify for the defense. One of them recounted how Elias, during a mission in Afghanistan, shielded a comrade and was wounded, yet still completed the operation. The second described how Elias saved a group of civilians, risking his own life. Each story sounded like a blow to Reynolds' reputation. The jurors listened wide-eyed. People in the room held back applause. When Elias was given the floor, he stood up. His back was straight, his voice firm. "I defended my country without asking the color of the skin of those I saved. I didn't ask for glory, I didn't demand awards, but I will never allow anyone to call me a criminal for defending myself." The words sounded like an oath. Even the judge, previously strict and cold, lowered her eyes for a moment, as if her conscience stirred. Reynolds couldn't take it. He jumped up and shouted, "He's lying. All these stories are set up." But the noise in the room drowned him out. Now he looked not like a hero, but a man cornered. On the day the verdict was announced, the courtroom was packed to capacity. People stood in the aisles. Journalists occupied every free corner. Everyone knew that today would decide not only Elias's fate, but the question of justice itself. The judge read the decision. The defendant, Elias Thompson, is found not guilty on all counts. For a second, silence hung in the room, and then a thunder of applause erupted. The jurors smiled. Some spectators rose from their seats. Elias did not raise his hands in victory, nor did he shout. He simply nodded, like a soldier who received confirmation of a completed mission. His composure spoke louder than any words. For Reynolds, things ended differently. An investigation had already begun against him during the process, uncovering complaints of abuse of power, selective arrests, and racist remarks. Now he sat in the defendant's chair, but as a man who had lost respect in his uniform. The next day's newspapers ran headlines: "Hero exonerated, cop under investigation." After the trial, Elias didn't seek revenge. He returned to his neighborhood, the Bronx, where teenagers already knew his story. Now, they looked at him differently, not just as a former SEAL, but as a force of spirit. He organized classes in discipline and self-defense, teaching the kids to believe in themselves and hold their heads high, even when the world was against them. A few months later, the same court, where he had once been chained, convened again, but for a ceremony. Elias was invited as a guest of honor. The judge presented him with a plaque from a city for his service and courage. Veterans, families, and children sat in the room. The boy who had recognized Elias at the beginning of the trial came again. This time, he walked closer, held out his hand, and gave a salute. Elias knelt down, looked him in the eye, and quietly said, "Never let anyone chain your freedom." The room rose. People applauded not just a soldier, but a man who proved the truth always finds a way.